Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to another episode of The Breakdown with your hosts, BaseDaKID and Tony, the Pugilist Boy, and we are the children of the game. Tony, how are you and how was your weekend?
My weekend was very calm. Yeah, it was just a nice weekend. Pretty much everything that I would possibly want in terms of picks went the way I expected it to. Yeah, just pleasant. And how about you, my friend?
My weekend was all right. I mean, in terms of boxing, minus one fight. Every pick that I made was correct. So can't really complain. I ended up being third in my predictions league, so not too shabby. No, sorry, fifth, but it's like fifth out of 100, so can't complain. Um, yeah, other than that, everything else, no real issues, nothing to report. It looks like people are surprised that we were on time today because there doesn't seem to be as many people within the comments as you would normally get by this time. But for the time being, let's just say what's up to who is here. So Untraceable, big ups to you, number one this week. Let's see if we keep that happening for next week as well. Skyliner, the editor, is number two, and Philip Answer is number three. And then, yes, Danny from Fight Fan, big ups to you, is fourth person in the building. So yeah, let's salute to you guys, and I guess we'll kick it off. What we will do, seeing as it's a little early in the game, what we'll do is talk very briefly about the Queensberry card that took place on Friday. Now, I don't know how much of that you did see, Tony. Big up to Hot
Mm,
Prize, who's also in the building. Only really going to just mention very briefly the Mark Chamberlain versus Artem Ramlav's fight. There was some other decent fights on there. I did actually attend the event. I was there for the last four fights on the card, I believe, the last three or four. But yeah, we'll talk about the main event. Mark Chamberlain against Artem Ramlavs. Very fun fight. Um, Ramlavs did not come to just make up the numbers, and I think Chamberlain probably was in for a harder fight than he expected. He got cut over the eye in the seventh round. I think it was via a punch. So had that cut have got any worse, then it would have had to go to scorecards. But it was a fun back and forth type fight. Chamberlain got the stoppage in the last round. I think in like the second minute of round number 10. It was a very good stoppage. He basically just sustained a sustained beating on Ramlavs, who rallied back several times in the fight. And there was times where he also like he was causing Chamberlain some issues as well. But yeah, overall, it was a very fun fight to watch. It was definitely a fun fight to see live as well. The York Hall, I've got to give it to Frank and Queensbury. Them York Hall cards have been much better than they used to be. Before they were very much sort of run of the mill. But watching them live, especially recently, it's almost like he's got that York Hall science down to a T. And the main event didn't start that late either. It still was late by maybe regular standards, but it wasn't terrible. So yeah, got a big up Frank and obviously Dev and Francis and George for putting that one on. Good card overall. If you haven't watched it, I mean, I'm sure some of the highlights will be on the TNT Sports or the Queensbury YouTube. So feel free to watch the highlights. There was some good, decent stuff there. But Tony, you're saying you didn't see any of that whatsoever, no?
none at all. Friday night I was busy.
Okay. Hold on. What's this? Jay Jonas Base. Next time you interview Dev Sani, you gotta press him, or should I say Bacon Sani? Yeah, right. So, Jay, what I will say is I stopped using that nickname because I don't know if it could be offensive. I've never asked. I don't know what possible religion he may come from, but that yeah, it may end up being offensive. Hence why I've stopped saying it, and I won't say that to him. But I will press him. I will press him on whatever issues you may want. So if you put them in the chat, I'll have a look, and I should actually see them this Friday. So I will ask whatever questions it is that you feel. Okay, Jay says I'm Muslim and I still say it. That's cool, but again, I don't know if he's gonna appreciate it. I have to ask him first. But he does know that I've had certain nicknames for him in the past. But I'm happy that you found it funny, as funny as when I was saying it. Obviously, it's not so much more about the the animal, more so just his surname. But yeah, bless ups to you anyway. You look like a new. I don't think I've seen you in the chat before, so big ups to you and thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm assuming you must watch my channel, so thank you very much for being either a subscriber or just a watcher of some of the content. Right, Tony, let's get into it. Let's go to, I guess, what you love doing this. I don't know. The interaction needs to be here. They're uploading footage when the show started. All right. I don't know what particular fight Tony is uploading. So let's see, ketchup or HP sauce. Jay, I'm gonna be real, ketchup. I like HP sauce, but ketchup is always the go-to. That's what I will say. Um, so yeah, but okay. I don't know where I'm supposed to go now because Tony's just disrupted my entire flow.
It's done. It was a quickie, but it was one of them knockouts that we haven't discussed it. But when I saw the footage, I thought I've got to upload this. So why don't I show it straight off the bat? Because
Go
it's
ahead.
literally a quick knockout, and it has to go down as one of the highlight knockouts of the year because I just love it. So it's from the Katie Taylor show. It's Fisioli. It was just such a sweet knockout. So nice, I had to play it twice.
I mean, it was okay to be honest. The knockout of the year might have been the one last week in Australia, but you'll see that when it comes to my KO of the year awards and see if it makes my number one spot. But yeah, well done to Visioli on his debut. Now, so yes, let's talk about so first main event, we will talk about Katie Taylor. We will talk about Chantel Cameron versus Katie Taylor too. Let's say it correctly. She was the A side fighter in that particular bout. Now, Tony, as you didn't see the Friday footage, I'm gonna let you start and you can give your takes on how that fight went and what you liked and what you didn't. Go for it.
Okay, so the rematch, Chantel Cameron defending her title against Katie Taylor in Dublin. Now, I kind of thought this was going to be repeat because I thought that Chantel would be stronger in this fight and would potentially benefit from knowing the timing she needed with Katie. But I was also worried that Katie would be coming at this at a pace that would be phenomenal. And I wasn't disappointed in the quality of the fight, but what I think was a couple of things that I noticed was obviously Katie's using her little flurries against the speed of Cameron. But for me, that cut you can see there on the forehead, that was a constant menace for Cameron. And I kind of feel like it must have played on Cameron's like overall performance because it was one hell of a cut and it just oozed blood the entire fight. It's one of them situations where you have to feel for the fighter who's looking at that or thinking about that consistently. And can I get through this fight with this cut profusely bleeding? Now, luckily for her, it didn't bleed directly into her eye, but there was a whole lot of blood pouring away. And that, for me, I have to feel that must affect the fighter in a negative way. Yeah. Now, there are two other things I want to mention. Obviously, we have to mention the knockdown in round 1. Because there's no if, buts, or maybes. There's a clear knockdown. And all I can think is that is what home cooking is all about. The referee, I don't know, he is totally like, what makes a referee even think that there's no way that's not a knockdown? I looked at this over and over again, and no matter what angle I look at it, the referee's in the perfect place. There's no foot tripping. They can own, I can't think what makes the referee think that is not a knockdown. So unfortunately, this is another thing that plays into the hands of Chantel Cameron. It plays into the hands of Katie Taylor, and it kind of must get a mental block for Chantel Cameron, because she must be thinking, well, rah, I just knocked the girl down clean. And the referee's just gone by and gone, nah, I'm going to let that go.
Well, you say that. I'll let you carry on. But what I will just say to counteract what you've said there, she didn't complain. She didn't look at the ref like, what's going on here? Like, what? Like, so if she had maybe protest, but I think like if you
isn't
feel,
going to make any difference.
But it might put more of an emphasis on the either on that being a bad decision in the moment, because from she hasn't complained, it looks as almost like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm complicit with what you've said. Sometimes you need to just make it known that, yo, what are you doing? And then it maybe puts it in their mind, doubt for the next potential thing to go in your favor. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was the first round. You're probably thinking, look, I've knocked her down once, I'll do it again. And clearly she goes for it. She's going for it. She knows, you know what, I've dropped her once, I think I can drop her again. And I kind of feel like that's part of the reason her game plan maybe have shifted a little bit from where they were looking at it from the last fight, where every time you throw, I'm going to time you with a combination of my own. She still does that, but obviously Katie's made changes herself and is throwing blistering punches in bunches whenever she's letting off. But look, this was a close fight. One judge has it 95-95. I believe your card had it 96-94. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's one round in it. I'm not going to say this isn't a close fight, but there are certain things that happened that I didn't like in this fight. I thought it was a very entertaining fight. I also think Katie does win it, but my gripe is with the final 3 rounds. Probably, yeah, final 3 rounds. Because Katie's holding is Lawrence Okolie-ish. It's deplorable. And for the referee not to intervene and say something, to me, that's home cooking again. So she got home cooking with the knockdown, and she gets home cooking in the last 3 rounds. Not that she wins those rounds, but the holding stops Chantel doing effective work. And she might have gained something in those 3 rounds had she not been allowed to hold. And those were rounds where Katie's energy looks depleted. She comes back big in the 10th, but her energy looks depleted in definitely 8 and 9. And I'm kind of not happy with what I'm seeing in those rounds. So, look, great fight. Well done to Katie Taylor for having the fortitude to come through what was a very grueling fight, for adjusting from the previous fight that she lost. But I'm caveating the win with a couple of points where home cooking were in her favor and possibly could have got her, the win in a fight that might have got draw on it had the home cooking not took place.
All right, let me ask you a question. The holding, right? Did you have an issue with it in the first fight between the two?
Not so much. No, I don't. In fact, I'm gonna say no because the result went the way I thought it would go.
Okay, so because the result didn't go the way you thought it would go this time, you had an issue because the
I
holding was
thought the
exactly the
holding was
same.
egregious. I thought
But
the
it was,
holding was egregious in this
but
fight.
it
In
was
this,
exactly the same. She done exactly the same,
mm.
in the same amount of time, in all the rounds. The only difference is she
But
did
she
it.
benefited from it this time. That's the
Yeah,
difference.
but the problem is, you're saying it was holding, yes, but she was clinch fighting. She was throwing combinations, ducking under a shot, grabbing Chantel, stopping her from working, turning, and then exchanging again. It's not as if she was just clinching, and then stopping everything, and then as soon as they get broke, she jumps back in and clinches again. There was always action in between the clinches. So yes, there was a lot of clinching, but she did it in a legal way because clinching is a legal tactic depending on how you do it. And because there was always either arm free or there was exchanges in enough of those clinches for it not to just be holding and just like that. That's why I don't particularly think it was egregious. Yes, there was a lot of it, but it wasn't super egregious.
Mm.
Um, Now, obviously, if we talk about the actual fight itself, I did predict Katie would win purely because I looked at how she fought the first fight. The issues that she had was giving Chantel Cameron too much space and allowing Chantel to pump the jab and trying to counter punch her. Whereas when she got to sort of the later rounds in that fight, she started basically working more on the inside, just exchanging, using flurries, riding undershots, and then she would hit, and then she would grab to stop to stop Chantel from doing her work, break, do the exact same thing. A la a bit of Klitschko, a la some Devin Haney, and some other fighters. Like ultimately, I saw that and said, okay, she's gonna probably see the success that she had in those later rounds and try and apply that effectively from earlier in the fight. Now, I do agree with you. I personally do also think it was a knockdown. I'm not sure what the ref saw, but he ruled it instantaneously. So at that point, as I said, because Chantel hasn't even looked at him like, huh, kind of thing, even any kind of motion, it almost to me seems like she felt maybe something happened at that moment as well. Um, but that then doesn't discount the fact that I think Chantel, as I also said in my video, I feel that she got too confident in the fact that she knows she can beat Katie, and she kept saying that she's looking for the stoppage, she's looking for the knockout. So she was taking unnecessary chances at times, not even using her jab at times to walk into range, because her whole mantra was that she was just going to be able to land the heavier punches, not taking into account the fact that even if you're not getting hurt necessarily by the punches that Katie's throwing, if they're scoring, they're having an effect on the judges. And so she ended up losing a bunch of rounds thinking that she's going to get it back towards the end of the fight. And by that point, Katie, old woman, they're out of the fight, essentially. And I always had a feeling that she was capable of doing that. So, um, yeah, look, ultimately, I feel as if some things, yeah, there were a couple of things that did go Katie Taylor's way and things that did go against Chantel, but there's also things that Chantel did that were going against Katie in terms of, the forearm to the throat, like tried to using her forearm to create separation rather than her shoulder, um, and things of that nature. There was more hitting to the back of the head from Chantel than there was from Katie. So they were both doing things outside the necessary remit of sportsmanship, but it's an undisputed fight. You're gonna take whatever advantages you can take up until the point that you get reprimanded or a point comes off. And I think that had any one of them have been warned specifically for something, they probably would have stopped doing it more. Now, ultimately, what I will say is the ref let it slide on both sides. So Katie, yes, she got more favoritism. I'm not going to disagree with that, but ultimately they both were doing things and both were being let go. I think the issue for Chantel is this fight, as opposed to the last one. she didn't work as effectively on the inside or in the clinches for enough time as she did in the last fight. Because Katie did, you know, she hit and she clinched in the last one, but Chantel was able to create more separation. In this one, I think that she tried to make too much of the point of, oh look, ref, she's holding me like my arm, and she's holding her arms out wide, and like, you know, whereas in that point she could actually be doing something to create separation to then go again. Because when she was getting rough on the inside, she was having a lot of success. She was doing some dirty boxing, holding the back of the head down, throwing uppercuts on it. Like she, you know, they were both doing what they needed to do to win. Katie just did more of it and had more of an advantage in the end. So to me, it was a really good fight. I don't know if it was better than the first one, but it might have been. It wasn't Katie. It wasn't the best fight or the best women's fight, as far as I'm concerned. But it was a very I wouldn't say it was back and forth, but it was very intriguing, especially towards the end. Can Katie actually survive? Because her legs did look gone from about round 8 to the 10th round. But yeah, it was a good fight. And it was probably Katie's best performance in terms of coming back from adversity and, you know, being the underdog for the first time in her career, and having that one last great performance to hang her head on. So I enjoyed it, and to be honest, that was the only fight on the card that I actually did enjoy, apart from Brennan and Morisy on the before the bell section. So yeah. Um, well, let's see. So Bruce Clyde, the way the knockdown came, it looked very much like her foot got stepped on because her leg was straight as she went down. But after looking closer, there was no steps or legit knockdown. Bruce, I can't disagree with you. I thought it was also a knockdown, but again, um, right. There was a comment earlier on that I wanna. Where was it? I think it was from Jay Genus. He says. Right, what do you guys honestly think about the levels in women's boxing? Sometimes it's like rock'em sock'em robots. Um, what I will say, Jay, is there is some very skilled and very good women boxers, but there are a lot more less talented ones. And because the divisions aren't as deep, especially the higher up you go, it's more noticeable when there are complete mismatches in the ring. And obviously the lack of power sort of doesn't create enough separation between sort of the elites and maybe some of the also runs. So, you know, a lot of the time you might feel like they have a chance. That's kind of my opinion on it. But you know, it's getting the pool is getting deeper, and again, the lower down you go in the weight classes, they are the more competitive and sort of the more talent range you find. So anything from maybe 135, 140 maybe is sort of the limit, but 135 downwards, there's a lot of stacked divisions, especially 122. That's probably the most stacked one. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, no, I agree. I enjoy women's boxing. Yeah, you do get a very diverse range of boxers, punchers, weekenders. You know, I've got to say there. You know, there are some girls that are in it, and you know, look, it would be remiss of me to say, I look at the women that I train, and some of them I think, you know what, if you were to really give this a go, you can make a bit of money. But you've got to be careful which weights you choose, because some of them weight categories have got killers. And as you said, 122 example, full of killers. But yeah, you know, you go above super middleweight, and you all of a sudden you know, if you can find someone good enough, they could be in the mix very quickly. But I do like the technicality of women's boxing. I enjoy it at the amateur level as well. So, you know, I just think it's a sport very much still growing. And I look forward to seeing it grow and get even better. You know, I love the fact that we've got big fights now headlining. I think, you know, I went to the all-women's card at the O2. I enjoyed that thoroughly. So yeah, onwards and upwards. Give props to every woman who went as the ring, because it is, you know, a game that I know, and you know, anyone who walks into that squared circle, it takes something. You got to have a different kind of character to get in there.
Okay. What's this? Apart from Serrano, you can't tell me another name on Katie's record. Delphine Pursoon is definitely a name on the record. Natasha Jonas.
I've been at both fights with Katie versus Delphine, and Delphine gave her hell in both fights. And in all honesty, I thought Delphine won the first fight in New York. So,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
that's a
there's that. Obviously, you've got, like I said, you've got Natasha Jonas is
Natasha
on her record.
Jonas, yep.
Um, Christina Leonardo is a very good win on the record as well. Now Chantel Cameron, and there's plenty more. There are other very credible. It's whether you know them or not, or you're familiar on them is different. But that's just the debate names. There's a lot more on there.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what I'll say with regards to that. Um, let's see. Just want to get a couple more, and then we need to move on. Let me see if there's any other comments in there that we sort of need to address. Actually, while we're here, also, so big up to Ellis Palmer. He said, I felt Cameron nearly had the fight. Haven't watched it back yet, but I thought Cameron was a round up after 10. Is that a wild take? It's not a wild take. I wouldn't agree with it, but it's not wild. It depends on what you uh it depends on how much you put stock in maybe the power differential in the two fighters. Because there were
Mm.
definitely some rounds where you could say Cameron looked like she landed the more effectful work, but Taylor just landed more and had more of the round. So if you like the effect, if you like the power punching, then maybe you give some of those rounds to Chantel. Some people most people would have said the best you could give her is 5, but um, if you had her up, 6 rounds to 4, I wouldn't argue. I just wouldn't agree. Um,
Mm.
I think
I mean,
that's
the round nine was split between the three judges. Two judges saw it for Katie Taylor. One judge saw it for Chantel. To me, as I said, at that point in time, I thought Katie was flagging a little bit. I would have given round 9 to Katie. So sorry to Chantel. So that's an immediate swing round for me.
Well, I'll tell you the rounds how I scored it. I scored the first round to Chantel. I scored
Mm-hmm.
the second, third, fourth, and fifth to Katie. I scored the sixth to Chantel. I scored the seventh to Katie. I scored the eighth and the ninth to Chantel, and then I scored the 10th to Katie. So that's how I came up with my 96, 94.
Because
Um,
interestingly, you scored the fifth round to Katie,
yep,
but two judges saw that as a Chantel round.
yep. I'm aware
So
of that, but
yes,
but one
it's
also saw it
interesting.
the other
It's
way.
just it's clearly look, boxing is subjective. We come on here, we give our breakdown, we give sometimes we do differ in terms of what we see in terms of different styles of fights, and people do like different things in their boxes. So yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, what's this, Rosie? Irish, are you saying that you personally know Katie Taylor? You spend time with her enough to know she doesn't drink? Oh, okay, so that's probably a chat within the. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's see. What's your. Actually, Tony, you can speak on this one real quick before we get to the next fight.
Well, we've got the footage of Paddy Donovan versus Ball, so I'm going to bring that straight up and get straight into that. Excuse me a second while I bring it up. Okay, so Paddy Donovan versus Danny Ball. Paddy Donovan is 11-0. Danny Ball 13-1-1. Fighting at welterweight. It's a 10-round fight. Ball goes down twice in the fourth round, which you will see a little bit of footage of because it's a great knockdown. And then his corner throw the towel in. Paddy Donovan is undoubtedly a star. Look, I like his style of fighting. He caught Danny Ball with a great shot to drop him in the fourth, and then he went on a non-stop blitzkrieg onto Danny Ball in the corner. Danny Ball had his hands raised, and for those of my kids that are watching this and want to talk about the swarm that I keep telling you about, that's the fight where you see A guy holds his hands up, and if you just throw hands, boxers have to get out of that, and very often they freeze. And effectively, Danny Ball was unable to get out of that. And then Paddy Donovan did really well to finish off Danny. You know, he got him on the floor and then the corner threw the towel in. But for the 4 rounds that we saw of Paddy Donovan, he throws hard punches. He uses good footwork. He, great stiff jab. And against again, Danny Ball in the first couple of rounds, you know, he just set the tone. He set the tone, you know, was in the middle of the ring, dominated the speed of the action. And as I said, caught his man with a beautiful shot and then finished off the action when he needed to in a very effective way.
Okay, good stuff.
I'm looking forward to his next steps.
Right, so let's talk about. Okay, there's 2 other cards on there, I suppose, 2 other fights on that card, maybe just to have a quick chat about. So we'll do a proper breakdown on the Brennan fight, but for now we'll just mention the Sky Nicholson and Lucy Wildheart fight, purely because Sky got her very first stoppage in her 9th bout. So we'll give her a bit of credit for that, even though it wasn't I won't say it was a poor stoppage, but it was very soft. The only reason I think it even got given as a stoppage in the first place is just because Lucy Wildheart's nose was busted, so obviously it was bleeding, making it look worse than anything else. Because apart from the busted nose, there wasn't really any other damage on her face. But that being said, yeah, she did the corner through the towel in. I don't think she won a round. Sky's, I mean, look, I've had my criticisms on her style. I still don't like the fact that even when she's totally dominating, that she doesn't do anything different to try and make it emphatic. But she gets the victory ultimately. So congrats to her. If she does look to face Amanda Serrano next, I still don't think that she's got even the actual style she has. I don't think is gonna work, because if you just end up, you know, on the back foot for the entire fight, eventually either Amanda will get to you, or the judges are just gonna have it looking as if you're being put on the ropes for the entire duration of the fight, and you could probably end up losing it through inactivity. So
we won't address Rosie Mason's point about Eddie Hearn.
Well, I mean, we can do.
Defamatory.
We don't have to pull it.
Defamatory.
We don't have to pull it up.
We don't need to. We don't need to.
We don't need to pull it up. But Rosie's entitled to her. I'm assuming it's her opinion. They say Eddie is, very invested in Sky, so no favoritism there. No, Rosie, I agree with you. But what I said on Twitter, and I say it now, and the moment she loses, it's going to be very hard for her to remain on cards. Whether she's quote unquote a pretty face or not, that's going to be irrelevant, because there's a lot of better looking women than her that scrap a lot better and they're a lot more entertaining. So at the moment, the O is what's keeping her on the cards. The moment she loses the O, unless she incredibly emphatically changes her style to a lot more fan friendly, like, maybe not rock'em sock'em, but closer to like that, then yeah, she's gonna find it very difficult to remain on cards. So that's what I will say with regards to that one. But yeah, thank you very much.
I just want to go very quickly back to a comment from Danny at Fight Fan regarding Paddy Donovan. He's definitely watched Naseem Hamed. Yeah, you could tell by the shorts. He's definitely the showman. And I agree, Danny, that Paddy has definitely got a little flavour of Naseem Hamed in him.
Oh, that's me. Oh, sorry,
That's
Rosie. Okay, he's actually a guy. My name is Ross, but my nickname has been Rosie for decades. I don't know why they would call you Rosie. That's fair enough. I won't ask, but yeah, okay, cool. Thank you very much, Ross. I'm gonna call you Ross from now on. Right. Okay. Cool. Let's move on to Brennan versus Morisy. I'm assuming you watched that one, yeah?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Let you start. Let you do this one.
Yeah, I thought Morisy started really sprightly. He was using the jab well, but again, it just...
Oops.
Come
That
on,
up with
Tony. See,
sound by the
that's
looks of it.
yes.
Sorry, my bad.
All right, late. Okay, so basically, the one thing I'll say about that fight, because I didn't see it all the way from the beginning, I saw it from the third round onwards. One thing I really enjoyed about that is, Brennan had a very clinical way of being able to cut the distance and get Morisy to basically, um, Morisy was trying to fight on the outside for the majority of it, but Brennan was able to sort of force him to exchange, and I don't think Morisy was kind of ready for that fight. He, what I would say is he showed a lot of heart in there. Ultimately, it was a very good sort of back and forth, but you could just tell that one person was more comfortable in the fire than the other. Like whenever Brennan was taking shots, he never looked like those shots were really troubling him and that he needed to sort of get out. He always was able to sort of hit the shots and sort of take those shots, but use that momentum to then get his own work off and stay close to Morisy. And I think that entire fight, because Morisy was having to throw to keep Brennan off of him, it sort of made him a bit more tired and lost a bit of focus and concentration in the bout, which ultimately led to his untimely stoppage. I believe it was in the 8th round. I think it was an 8 rounder, but I could be slightly wrong with that take. But yeah, what was your thoughts on it quickly, Tony, before we move on?
I'm just gonna try and load that real quick. So
for
just
flip's sake.
go to the next fight. Go to the next fight, and then I'll give you my comments on that one after.
I don't even know what the next. Okay, what's the okay? Real brief. Say congrats. This guy. Every week, this guy tries to sabotage me, people. All right. So I'm trying to think. Well, okay. Real quick. Congratulations to Zelfa Barrett. Obviously, he was on before the bell as well. 8 rounds. I think it was an 8 rounder against Eon, Costin Eon. He done fairly. He did okay in the fight. I still felt like he got hit more than he needed to, and there's still times in that fight where I feel as if I don't know. There's something about Zelfa whereby I don't see him really going above the level he's been at. I feel like he's a guy that can show a decent account of himself at the world level, but there's something about even his style and his work rate that just tells me that when it comes down to crunch, he's gonna more often than not fall short at that world level. I mean, look, a vacant title is always a possibility, but I don't think he's ever going to be maneuvered into any of those vacant title slots, and I feel like he's going to just end up as a nearly run. That's kind of my opinion. I like watching him. I want him to do well, but I just can't see enough that makes me believe that he's gonna, be up there and possibly get a title. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, that's sort of how I kind of see that one going. Um, let's see. Jay Gina says Zelf for British level. I mean, fair enough. I'm just trying to think.
So just to reiterate your point there on Zelfa Barrett, yeah, I do believe you're right in that he has a level that I think we've seen. British, Commonwealth, European. Look, the kid's got heart. He's got obviously the fighting gene in him from his uncle. But elite world level with those killers in his weight division, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But it'll be an entertaining fight.
Beat said he needs to be way more active, and I definitely concur with that. Especially, I feel like that's the kind of style. If you're not active, like you can lose energy and stamina very quick. So yeah, my opinion on that one. But hey, right, have you got that footage up yet?
It certainly is, my friend. It certainly is. So we're going to talk very briefly about Brennan versus Morisy. So we had Jamie Morisy 5-0, 1 draw. Emmett Brennan 1-0. So Emmett Brennan is clearly someone that we, Eddie is very high on. He had a great amateur career, and you can see, he's got good timing. He's done well with in the early rounds of this fight. This was light heavyweight for the Irish Celtic light heavyweight title. It was an 8-rounder, and effectively, Jamie Morisy, with his length, he's obviously got the longer arms, the height advantage above Emmett Brennan. And he used them quite well in the early rounds, I thought. Boxed quite well, in the early rounds. But you can see the way that Emmett Brennan has got that Tyson-esque type of style against the, taller, lankier fighter. Use a crouch, gets a lot of leverage in his shots. He's getting some good leverage in those shots that you can see. That overhand right, throwing punches in bunches. Very effective in the way he fights. And all I can say is, again, he's got very good fundamentals. We like to, give the young up-and-coming starlets a chance to, or give them a bit of praise. And, he did very well. This is the finishing to the fight. The referee stepped in the 8th round and called it a day because the pressure that Emmett put onto Jamie Morisy was just too much. And obviously, Emmett gets the win. So he goes and gets his first strap in his second professional fight, and is one that we shall be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Yep. Beats agrees with me. Failed to make use of the height and reach. As I said, he was all too willing to give it up in the pocket and fall into Brennan's game. But Brennan also made him do that, as I said earlier. So, yep, I agree with you, Beats. Thank you very much for that. Right. So, with that being said, let's move over to the cards that took place in the US. I believe it was Vegas, and we will start that one off with
T-Mobile Arena.
Yep, so T-Mobile in Vegas. So a very quick one, without everyone really going too much into the actual fight. But congratulations to Michel Rivera for getting a points victory over Sergey Lipinets. I did actually think he might stop Sergey, but he got the points victory after a year and 2 months, I think, out of the ring. So congrats to him. Also, congrats to Lamont Roach, who are also predicted to beat Hector Luis Garcia. Even though he'd been out of the ring for about 15 months, I just felt he was the more put together fighter of the two. He got it on a split decision, although I didn't, from what I saw of the fight, I didn't actually think it was as close as the judges had it. But I think maybe that was because Hector might be the home fighter, so they give a bit more consideration to him. But yeah, outside of those two, let's talk about the sort of the main three in that one. Now we're going to start
also,
off with...
sorry to interrupt. We also saw the second fight of Kermel Moton, the Floyd Mayweather protege, who got a first round stoppage against Hunter Turbeville.
All right,
so
it's Kermel Moton. Just to
say. sorry.
Yes, aka the Gervonta Davis lookalike. Look, it was for some reason it's weird that they got him fighting after the event rather than maybe just being the float just before the main event, because I'm sure there was about a good 45 minutes between the Charlo fight and the Benavidez one. So just put him on there. It's a 4-rounder. But yeah, okay, cool. But well done to him. Maybe the reason they put him afterwards is so that there's not really any pressure. Or maybe if you put him as a float between the co-main and the main, maybe that's too much for them. I don't know. But yeah, second fight, first round KO. Congrats to him. He done well. But let's talk about if we're talking about knockouts, where we have to obviously talk about Subriel Matias, who he seems to be like the soul snatcher at this point, because he's in his last five fights, every single person has quit on their stall, said they don't want no more. Like he literally takes people's soul from them. Now, in the first 2 rounds, you had Shohan Ergashev using more of his boxing to keep away from Matias, but he was also, like there you saw them, he was able to turn him. He was able to sort of unload his own shots and his own power on Subriel while he's just there testing to see, okay, how much strength has he got? Like, what's this, what's this guy's power range? Subriel's always very calm and very calm and composed. But with that being said, you had Ergashev, who has been out of the ring for a very long time, and also he had said that this could potentially be his last fight, regardless of what happened. And I think he was only about 31, so maybe he was always kind of looking for the way out. And in this one, as you can see there, you just got Subriel just in the pocket. He's just able to, he's able to get people to fight his fight. He just keeps on them, that constant pressure, making them throw when they don't want to throw, and then ultimately that sort of tires them out. Then he gives them it looked like a lot of his punches look very innocuous, but he seems to be very Beterbiev-esque, whereby everything hurts, even the ones that just look like the little pity patter shots. They just seem to hurt you and break you down. And then when your shots aren't having the desired effect that you think they should be having, it's like, do I really want to go through that again? These are hurting more than they should for the shots that he's throwing. What happens if he throws the big shots at me? And I think that's what almost mentally gets to some of these opponents, especially the ones whereby maybe they might be considering and thinking about obviously what happened with Maxim Dadashev. Like, I don't want that to be me. So if that's the case, I think if it's only going one way, let me sit this one out. I like his style, and I like he's box office. The only problem is if he was bilingual, I think he'd be very much maybe not a pay-per-view star, but he'd be a lot more well-renowned than he is. The fact that obviously he's Puerto Rican, he's a Puerto Rican that doesn't speak English, not active enough to really be ingrained in people's minds unless you're a proper like boxing fan. And being 31, so he's only got sort of a couple prime years left. So it's a shame that he didn't, do the matchroom deal, because I definitely feel like he would have been out a lot more. And there's a lot more 140 pounders on that matchroom roster on his own, or even the Golden Boy one to mix a couple cross promotional fights with, and he could be out a lot more and be in a lot more people's minds and consciousness. But overall, again, it wasn't his greatest performance, but it was effective. It was efficient. It was another day in the office, another time card stamped, and for him, I guess another early night. So big up to Subriel. And what did you think of it?
Yeah. So again, this is a fighter that not everybody would have had the chance to see. This fight was on Fight TV, so again, it wasn't on one of the big platforms. So this guy probably is going under the radar for a lot of fight fans. So I'm going to show the video again that I managed to pick up, because he is someone that definitely deserves to be highlighted for his capabilities. In terms of the early rounds, you can see here that Ergashev is very handy. He's standing in the pocket with Matias, and he's unloading. There's a comment about Ergashev not coming in ready, but I look at the body and it tells me he did all the hard work. But I just think that Matias is just a different level to an Ergashev. Ergashev was 23-0 coming into this fight, so he's undefeated, and he's just not. There's levels to this game, and one thing you notice here that Matias isn't the greatest by way of footwork. He very often throws punches from a very flat-footed position. Not always, but he does at time find himself stood flat-footed in front of his fighter and rely on hip movement to generate the power. He doesn't dip at the knees in the way some fighters do. Not saying he doesn't at all, but there are times when I look at this guy and think he is able to generate some ferocious power just from the hips. And, the power is definitely something that you have to be aware of, because he's destroying everybody in his division. He is a killer. And, if you haven't seen him
Unfortunately,
before,
he's a literal killer, which so let's not use that word for him.
yeah,
Others
sorry.
maybe, not him. Yeah.
If you're not aware, yeah, he has actually killed a man a man has passed away, I should say, at his hands. But yeah, he's just literally able to generate so much force in his punches from such a short distance. He doesn't need, a lot of room to generate the power. As I said, little swivel of the hips, and that power comes in. The hooks to the body, the hooks, the uppercuts. They effectively put pay to Ergashev in 6 rounds. And I just think it was just Ergashev was just not able to deal with a fighter of that power at this level. I could certainly see Ergashev giving a lot of other fighters in the division a lot of trouble, but give Matias his props. He has a great chin. He took what he had, he rode the shots, and he came back with the fire.
Okay, right. So moving on, we'll talk about Jamal Charlo and Jose Benavidez Jr. Go for it, Tony. Give us your thoughts.
Okay. So the long-awaited returning of Jamal, not Jamal, 32-0, the former undisputed. Was he undisputed yet? Undisputed middleweight champion.
No, he
fighting
only had
Jose,
the
the brother
WBC
of
belt.
David.
He only had the WBC belt. It was never undisputed. That was Jamal.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah. But look, I've always been high on the Charlo brothers, Lions in the camp. I've thought, I've really enjoyed his fights. Now, the weigh-in was just a mess. He weighed in heavy. He went away and came back and weighed in even heavier. And then there was all this talk about he only trained 3 weeks for this fight. Now, he's a gym rat. Let's not get it twisted. He's a gym rat. He's always in that gym. Obviously, he's been out of action for a long time, but let's not get it twisted. Despite his inability to get in the ring and fight in a competitive fight, the guy is always in the gym. And you could tell by his shape. He looked in great, fantastic shape when he hit the scales. And obviously, this fight to me showed me that there are levels to this game. I just said it about Matias, and I'm going to say it again. Jamal Charlo is levels above Jose Benavidez Jr. And he showed it in this fight, able to unload when he needed to, he was able to dominate the game. Jose Benavidez, who was talking a whole bunch of trash before this fight, and Jamal was able to just deal with him in an appropriate way. This was a 10-rounder, so there was no belt on the line. It was a catchweight contest. Obviously, when you look at the weights, there was a huge differential, 166 to 161. And Jamal obviously was able to take advantage of his weight advantage and bully the smaller Jose in this situation. But you can see, lots of flashes of the old Jamal, the hand speed, the catch counters, the twisting the man off the center line, and then, hitting him with the overhand lefts and rights. So lots of action there. In what was an entertaining 10-round fight. There's no doubt that Jose was trying his best, but ultimately this was a fight which was about levels, and quite simply, Jamal was able to win this at a canter. The judges had this 100 to 90, 99 to 91, and 98 to 92. So it was either 8, 9, or 10 rounds to Jamal, and I wouldn't disagree with any of those decisions because he had this at a canter, in my opinion. Good to see him back. It was a tune-up fight for me because the levels were just so wide, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes next. I know Clyde has mentioned about him going up in weight. What's your thoughts?
Okay, so you know one of my favorite things to do is to pull you up when you say some crazy stuff. Right, so the first thing I have to pull you up on is you said that he's always in the gym, that he's a gym rat. Now, if that's the case, how could people say that he only trained 3 weeks for the fight? How were you in the gym if you was only training for 3 weeks? Secondly, you said that it's about levels. No, what I think it was about is the fact that Jose Benavidez Jr. is a career welterweight fighting at super middleweight for this fight. Jamal Charlo didn't even make the catch weight for the fight and then goes away to lose weight and then comes back heavier. So all of that's not levels, that's weight bullying. You can tell, you can look right there and see that they are not in the same weight class in any way, shape, or form. So to me, yes, his boxing skills are better overall, but the fact that you've got a guy in there who started a weight below where you started, but is ultimately two weights, realistically is about two weights below you, and you didn't even really make any effects. Like, name me one shot that you saw in the fight where Jamal actually like hurt him. So when we're talking about levels, I actually don't think there was, I don't think it was about levels at all. I literally think it's just a guy who's too big for the other guy, and who ultimately, I won't say labored, because he didn't have it wasn't like he went life and death, but it was a very labored and mundane performance. Like, realistically, you're supposed to be getting him out of there, and he didn't do anything that suggested to me that he was going to, apart from maybe that right there. So yeah, it was a win, fine. And like Danny said, okay, he said he follows him on Insta, and his page, he said his page don't indicate he's a gym rat, that he lives in the gym. To me, that's what I was thinking. I've seen a lot of it. He doesn't seem like someone that's always in the gym. He might not always be like a super heavy, but he doesn't look like someone that's always training to me. And yeah, ultimately, I'm looking at this, and he was supposed to win. It was a fight. It was never a fight he had any. There was never any chance of him losing this unless he was totally shot to pieces. He was always supposed to win this. And again, the fact that he's in there against someone that's started 3 weight classes below where he's about to campaign didn't really say much to me. But he got the victory. Congrats to him. So now he's had his tune up. It's time for him to drop the 160 belt and then make Mauricio Suleiman look even more stupid than he has been looking by keeping the belt inactive for the last 2.5 years, only for the guy to now come back and then get rid of it. Like, that to me shows the level of ineptitude that Mauricio Suleiman has at times. And he does some things okay, but this one is going to be one of those ones where people should actually start boycotting and refusing to pay WBC sanctioning fees, especially if he's he holds up the belt and then the guy doesn't even defend it in his next fight afterwards, because he's going to 168 full time. He already said he's gonna vacate it. So yeah, Mauricio looks like a complete idiot right about now, or he just looks corrupt. It's one or the other, and maybe it's both.
Both, both. Yeah. He's definitely both.
But yeah, ultimately they stagnated that middleweight division for the last 3 years. So it's time to get that division back active. Go up to 160 and let Jamel go to 168 and let Jamel go to 160, because we know that's where he's going next as well. And we can keep it moving.
Yeah. So that hopefully answers your question, Clyde. Cool. Moving on.
Right, talk about the main event. I was.
Oh,
This is one of your guys, so I'll let you go.
is it?
Well, they're even more yours than they are mine.
Okay. I didn't realize that I had any claims to any of these fighters, in all honesty. I'm neither a fan of. I'm a big fan of David Benavidez. I definitely like David Benavidez, but I was never the greatest fan of Demetrius Andrade. Obviously, you know, he's a talking merchant. He talked the talk. He's got himself into a position. I definitely think he's a good boxer. But look, David Benavidez is different. He's built different, and it's an interesting fact that Demetrius Andrade had previously not faced any champion, former or current, until this fight, and that kind of smoothed over the fact that look, he's never faced a guy of this kind of level. Now, as far as the fight is concerned, I definitely thought that Andrade came out with some great intention in the first couple of rounds. I think if you're looking at some of the action now, you might see some of the combination works that Demetrius comes out with, and he causes some small amount of difficulty for David Benavidez. But David seems like he's got this one in control. He's happy to stand in the pocket right in front of Demetrius. And as you can see, he's just wailing away with his uppercuts and his hooks. It's all about standing in front of the man, shooting that straight right hand through the southpaw guard of Demetrius, and effectively ignoring everything that Demetrius is throwing, because he hasn't got sufficient power to detract David from getting on into his face and unleashing those powerful hooks and uppercuts. And as you can see, he's going to town with those body shots and then the uppercuts. And this is David just going to town with power, because he's a flurry fighter. He's a guy that throws punches in much faster combinations than what we are seeing. But he doesn't need to employ those tactics in this fight. So the punch output for me is down for David Benavidez, because in this fight, he quite simply doesn't need to throw the flurries the way that we've seen him throw them in previous fights. You can see right now, he's just walking his man down. And Andrade doesn't have anything. He's caught him there with a beautiful uppercut. Andrade caught David Benavidez with a beautiful uppercut. But Benavidez is like, yeah, so what? I felt your power. I felt it in the first couple of rounds. And in all honesty, it's not good enough. It's not going to stop me. And there, now we just see Benavidez taking apart Andrade to the point where he eventually has to be stopped. Round 6, the referee literally says to Andrade, like, look, this fight is going one way. I need to see something from you. Andrade comes out, he gives what he can, but eventually the referee has no choice but to stop the action and eventually stop the fight. It's not the referee that stops it, it's the corner, isn't it? But yeah, David Benavidez, onwards and upwards. The clamor and the shouts for the fight against Canelo Alvarez increase. This is the last of the action. He's dropped Boo Boo, and there he is with his title belts. That was a reminder to everyone who the real champion is, as he said, and we can look forward to seeing potentially that matchup there between himself and Canelo in the future. I did see some talk of potentially him going up and fighting Dimitri Bivol. That again would also be a very interesting fight. David has the height, he has the length, he has the weight. He can definitely campaign at light heavyweight. So it would be interesting when and if he doesn't get that Canelo fight, if he wants to move up to the light heavyweight and challenge at that weight category. But yeah, that's it. I'm very impressed by the performance. As I said, there's levels to this game, and unfortunately, Bubo Andrade found out that he's not at the level necessary to defeat a guy of supreme talent as David Benavidez.
Right. So just to address what Danny has said here, belts are vacated so much these days that yes, Andrade is the first, but won't be the last with that never fighting a champ before. I think he will, Danny. In terms of in his spectrum, remember, we're talking about the first two-weight champion that's never fought a former, present, or future champion in their career until now and has never defeated one. I literally do think he will be the only one that ever happens to. I can't see I just can't see anyone else not at least fighting like one of those, old past it gatekeeper types, to be totally honest. Now, before I even talk about the fight and what each guy did well or didn't do well, what I want to talk about is firstly, I'll be doing a video tomorrow, or it will come out tomorrow, where I do need to retract something I said on the weekend wrap. And Daniel's put it right here. Andrade asked the corners to stop the fight. Now, I didn't actually see that in the initial, when I was watching the fight initially. I didn't actually see when he said stop it. Now, I thought it was the corner's choice, and I thought they made the right choice. However, him saying that to me, so obviously, look, so ultimately we say so he quit. He chose to leave the ring. Now, I have no issue with fighters quitting, but what I do have an issue with is fighters who basically talk a certain way and then don't back it up afterwards. Like if you ultimately he clowned Canelo for quote unquote losing to a basic fighter in Bivol. He says that Canelo has basically ducked him, and or Canelo like fighting no hopers when he ducked Zach Parker and allowed John Ryder to go and basically take care of his work and get the Canelo fight that he wanted. So you've got all of this. You've got him ducking Jamel Charlo in 2014. You've got him ducking Johnny Beck last year, and you've also got him ducking Zach Parker last year. So with all of this, with all of the shit you talking, you can't then quit on your stall. Like you've either got to take the beating or make the ref stop it or make the corner stop it. Like you can't say I quit if you're gonna talk as much shit as you talk. So ultimately, to me, it looks very bad on him, especially when you then say, oh, the one time you've actually stepped up in a fight and that's what happens to you. That's what makes it look even worse. And then if you want to say, and then my issue is he says, oh, well, I went up to his weight class, and people are like, oh, he dared to be great. I don't want to hear that. He didn't dare to be great. He couldn't make 160 safely anymore. That's ultimately what it was. And then outside of that, if you want to talk about, oh, well, I went up to his weight class, well, so did Canelo. And Canelo beat about 4 or 5 different people at 168. He started his career at 147 pounds. But you want to talk about I went up to his weight class. Canelo got beat quite soundly by Bivol, but Bivol didn't beat him up like that. So at the end of the day, I mean, look, I kind of, after the Zach Parker situation, I came off of the Andrade train. I always thought, okay, he'd been hard done by a couple of times, didn't get the fights he wanted. Maybe some people didn't want to fight him, but ultimately he orchestrated a lot of his own demise and his own downfall. So after the Parker fight, I had absolutely I had no more sympathy or sorrow for him. Now, admittedly, I did think that he would win this fight purely because there's a lot of things that he does that I knew David wouldn't have been used to, especially coming from a southpaw style. And I know because David squares himself up a lot, I just had a feeling there could be a potential him getting dropped. Obviously, David impressed me more in this fight than he has in some previous ones. Especially the fact that he started earlier than he normally does against, better or quote unquote better opposition than what he has been fighting. And I do like the fact that he was able to nullify a lot of the southpaw work, um, even from in the first and the second round. He was still getting to Andrade and making Andrade have to work more than he needed to, or more than he should have had to work in those early rounds. And him coming into the ring at supposedly 190 pounds was also a mistake. There's no reason for you to be that heavy when you've never been used to fighting at that weight before. Come in closer to where you normally come in, 180 probably, or like 182, somewhere around there, to say, oh, I want to bully the bully. Yeah, there's several times where he pushed David back and had David sort of on the back foot a little bit, but that probably tired him out more than it tired David, because David wasn't forcing the resistance. He was literally just walking back with him and just shelling up, taking a lot on the gloves. There was very little that was actually getting through. And maybe Andrade, being as heavy as he was, maybe took something off of the punches, because maybe they weren't as snappy as they should have been. Or maybe he didn't have enough energy to throw them with the same vigor that he's used to. So there's a lot of things that David did to nullify. And as Danny from Fight Fan TV rightly said, he did say this to Beats, that David would use a lot of the body work to take those legs away. Andrade made it easy for him by coming in heavy and making it easy for David to track him down. But yeah, David did well in especially launching that straight backhand from the outside and using that as his entry rather than even using the jab, launching the backhand and to get on the inside and then rip to the body, rip the quick hooks to the head as well. I was impressed with a lot of what he did. Even in those rounds, that the round that I only gave one round to Andre, if I'm gonna be honest. I know some people gave him 3 rounds. I gave him the first 3. I only gave him the second. I gave the first to David, second I gave to Andrade, and the third I actually kind of scored a draw. But after that, it was nothing but David Benavidez. And yeah, like I said, this is what you're supposed to do to someone that's not at the level that you're supposed to be. You're supposed to deal this damage to them. And so the fact that David ultimately gave him sort of dispatched of him in this way, okay, so that tells me now that I know what level you are. Because if you might say Andrade, let's say that he's fringe world level for the sake, because he's never beaten a world class or a world level fighter. So you say he's fringe. Well, we know David's above that now because of the way he dispatched a world class guy, or he dealt with a world class guy in Caleb Plant, and now was dispatched of a guy that was fraudulently world class in Demetrius Andrade. So again, I'm being very critical because, like I said, Andre talks too much shit to put on the performance that he put on, and ultimately, I don't care about he's the naturally bigger guy. Yes, David is a lot bigger than Andre. You can see it in the ring there. Like size wise, he is a much bigger guy. But ultimately, again, as I said, Canelo's been fighting bigger guys his whole career, and you don't want to give him the credit for that. So you don't get credit for quote unquote stepping up now and getting brutally exposed and beaten. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the fight. I was on board David fighting Canelo anyway. I still think Canelo beats him, but whether it happens in May or happens in September, which I think it will happen in September, to be totally honest. There's 2 mandatories left. Jaime Munguia is, I think, the WBA mandatory, and he is the WBC mandatory. I don't, I think Canelo is going to take care of the WBA one first, then take care of the WBC one second. I think that's how it's going to work. And as long as the fight happens in 2024, I still don't want to hear any talks of Canelo ducking him. But Benavidez has done what he needed to do. Congrats to him. I think he needs to be. I think he does need to stay active. So if he doesn't get the Canelo fight in May, that doesn't mean that he now has to sit it out and wait. He needs to fight someone, another credible name, not a tick over. You still need to stay sharp, and you need to stay with you know, you need to basically stay with in that elite level, or at least that world level. So fight someone else, another ranked contender. Um, just to answer J7, I know David Mills a WBA regular, but I don't know if he's been installed as a mandatory. I think it might be Jaime. If it's not that one, then it would have been. Then he must be for the IBF. It can't be the WBO already, because he satisfied that lot in May of this year, so they can't have called a second mandatory for him already. Unless he's gonna be the mandatory, and then they're saying, all right, let's just get rid of it before they call it now. Maybe I'll double check. I know Morel is a WBA regular, but I'm not sure if he's been installed as a mandatory yet. And I think he's also got some more work he needs to do leading up to that. So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on the fight. Yeah, well done to Benavidez, and let's see what he does moving forwards. Let's see what Andrade does and if he can redeem himself. But at this moment, yeah, he went out like a sucker, as they say, and that's my opinions on that. Any retorts, Tony? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just want to say, you know, look, this is one of them preliminary fights that makes you salivate at the idea of some of the potential fights for 2024. 2023 has been a bumper year for fights, and we still have 3 or 4 really good fights before the year ends. But 2024 could potentially outdo 2023. And you've got to go a hell of a way to outdo 2023 because of the fights that we've had this year. But, you know, Canelo versus Benavidez, potentially fight of the year candidate, amongst some of the other fights that we could potentially see in 2024. So yeah, as an appetizer to the main event for next year, I'm happy. I'm already starting to consider my Christmas list for 2024, and that definitely has whet the appetite.
Philip, just to answer your question, well, ultimately, here's the thing: the difference between, I guess, regular fighters and world-class or elite fighters. Elite fighters, for the most part, if they're training correctly, don't lose stay busy fights. So he would have to basically take his eye off the ball, and if he's ultimately, as you said, if it's a stay busy, then he's not gonna fight like one of the upper echelon guys. But as long as he's fighting someone that's within those the top 10 or the top 15 of the WBC, I don't really have an issue with that. Fight fan has said he should fight Sergey Derevyanchenko or Christian Mabili, as both similar height and build as Canelo. Right, Sergey. No, I think Sergey's had enough wars at this point in time. I feel like he's had the unfair rub of the green. I don't really think that tells him anything about you know, I don't think Sergey's got the same resistance as he used to have ultimately, and that one probably isn't. I don't think that's necessarily going to show him or give him the necessary work that he needs. And in terms of Christian Billy, I don't think that's a fight to take. If you're going to take a stay busy, that's not what you don't take Christian Billy. You don't take Kevin Lilly Sajo. You leave those guys alone until you have to fight them. That's not a fight you voluntarily take, in my opinion. Now, obviously, if he does, I will rate him, and if he comes through that fight, then he gets even more credit from me. But I still don't think those guys are on the level enough to a Canelo for you to suitably say that yes, he is now ready for that fight. But ultimately, he's probably as ready as he's going to be up until this point with for a guy that is busting at the seams at 168, who probably won't be able to make the weight past 2024 anyway. So that's sort of my thoughts on that one. But since we've come towards the end of the show, Tony, you got any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of. No, I think I've covered everything that needed. It's been a very long show. Been a lot of bouts that we've talked about. So yeah, onwards and upwards.
All right, give him the socials.
Right, so you can catch me on Twitter and YouTube as Pugilistboy. I can also be found on Instagram, but the account name is slightly different. It's Pugilistic Boy.
Right, and I'll just let it go through again so the people can see the spellings of those. Right, as you guys can see there. And for me, you can find me on YouTube at BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. Just type that in or type part of that in, it comes up. Instagram, BaseDaKID. Don't go in there for boxing because I don't really post boxing stuff except maybe on the story. Or you can find me on X under B_A_S_E, or you can just start to type in BaseDaKID and I do show up. I will be at the Natasha Jonas and Michaela Mayer press conference tomorrow, so there should be some content for Undefeated on for that, and maybe there might be some separate content on my channel for that one as well. But I will also have a video coming out probably tomorrow morning, which will be primarily there will be a lot of afterthoughts of Benavidez and Andrade and maybe what's next for both. And if you've heard what I've said today, you're going to get probably more of that, just maybe a bit more spicy. So if that's the kind of content you like, feel free to check out that video. But for now, let's just check out the last couple of interviews. Alex, thank you very much for tuning in, Alex. And obviously, I know yesterday was a bit of a nightmare for you and the reception in the van. But yeah, hopefully you definitely pass through next week as well. Be great to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your viewing and your participation. And then Philip, that's probably going to be a dead press conference. To be honest, I don't know. I feel like in our sort of our later years, Natasha's been getting a bit more spicy and a bit more definitely a bit more jokey in some of the stuff that she says. So I think there will be enough there, and Michaela will definitely say some things that I'm sure will maybe make Natasha react. So we'll see. If not, the interviews should be interesting when those get uploaded. But yeah, thank you guys very much. Hot Pies, bless up to you. Danny, bless up to you. Alex, as we just put up, J7 as well. Gonguru, you're in the building. Ross Mason, thank you very much. Obviously, Boxing Beats and Rhymes, the OG, thank you very much for passing through and showing support as always. And obviously, again, everyone from the start, Danny, Philip, and yes, Jay Genus as well. But with that, we are out and we will catch you next week. So, peace.